This is Optimal Startup Daily, episode 726, Maximizing Your Tax Advantages as an Entrepreneur, by Josh Bauerle with EOFire.com. And I'm Dan, I am your host here, and this is where I read to you from some of the very best blogs on entrepreneurship every single day, and that includes weekends and holidays. And if you want to learn more about this show or about all the shows in our network, you can visit oldpodcast.com, and while you're there, you can give us any topic requests you might have for future shows. But for now, let's hear from Josh, who is a guest writer on EOFire, as we optimize your life. Maximizing Your Tax Advantages as an Entrepreneur, by Josh Bauerle with EOFire.com. In the United States, there are two different tax codes for two different groups of people. While many of you may assume these groups are the rich and everyone else, they are actually employees and the self-employed. Employee versus self-employed. As an employee, the government gets paid first, and you get paid last. Every time your employer pays you, they are required to withhold various taxes that eat away at your take-home pay. By the time you receive your check, you've likely lost 20% or more of your income to the IRS and other government agencies. On the other end of the tax code are the self-employed. If you fit into this category, then you receive income and you pay yourself first and your taxes last. Before you ever pay a dime in income tax, you are allowed to deduct nearly any expenses incurred while conducting your business. While employees are allowed to deduct some unreimbursed expenses in connection with their job, the type and amount of expenses they're eligible to deduct are extremely limited. Maximizing your tax advantages. In short, being an entrepreneur offers significant tax perks that simply aren't available to employees. From the timing of tax payments to the number of deductions you can take, entrepreneurs have the ability to greatly reduce the portion of their income going to good old Uncle Sam. But all these great tax breaks don't come easily. The IRS will still try to take as much as they possibly can from the self-employed. Making the most of your tax advantages requires significant planning. Here are 3 tips for maximizing your entrepreneurial tax advantages and minimizing your tax liability. 1. Choose the right business entity. The business entity you choose will have a significant impact on both your legal liability and your tax liability. While many new business owners will either A, never form a separate business entity, or B, jump into an LLC because their uncle told them it was the way to go, I highly recommend working with a CPA or attorney to determine the best entity for you and your business. A few of the areas affected by the entity you choose are legal liability. Different entities come with varying levels of personal liability. The more risk involved with your business, the more you will want to factor this quality in your decision. Tax liability. The business entity you choose will likely have a huge impact on your business and personal tax liability. Choosing the wrong one could result in you paying significantly higher taxes. Tax forms filed. Some business entities are treated as an extension of your personal tax return, and no separate return is necessary. Others require a separate tax return for the business, which then, quote-unquote, flows through to the owner's taxes. Additional steps required. I've had several clients who chose a business entity for the tax benefits, only to find out they didn't follow all the steps required to become that entity. This usually results in paying much more in penalties than they saved with the entity. It's important to know all of the required steps with each business entity. If you're a new business, do the research necessary to choose the best entity for your business. If you are an experienced entrepreneur, periodically review your business entity to be sure it is still your best option. 2. Begin thinking of every expense as a potential business expense. As a business owner, everyday expenses suddenly become potential tax deductions. Your cell phone, your meals and entertainment, and even your vacations can be written off on your tax return, in part or in whole, if they meet the IRS requirements of a business expense. We will talk more about what constitutes a business expense next time, but if you're a business owner, you should be thinking of every expense as a possible tax deduction. And 3, keep extensive records. With all these great tax advantages comes a bullseye from the Internal Revenue Service. According to IRS statistics, small business owners are audited 6 times more often than salaried employees. Don't let this scare you too much, as the chances of an audit are still very low, 6% for self-employed versus 1% for employees. The increased threat of an IRS audit should not stop you from taking every deduction you're entitled to, but you should keep this threat in mind with your record keeping. There are said to be 3 rules when it comes to dealing with the IRS. documentation, documentation, documentation. At the very least, you should be keeping all your receipts and organizing them into various categories. A giant shoebox filled with thousands of receipts isn't going to cut it. The more organized you are, the better off you'll be. Whether you use accounting software, a bookkeeper, or a simple Excel spreadsheet, keeping extensive records will both maximize your tax deductions and protect you in the event of an audit. Enjoy the ride. No one wants to spend all their time thinking about taxes. You didn't become an entrepreneur to waste your days adding up receipts and checking the mailbox for letters from the IRS. By following these 3 tips, you will be able to minimize your tax liability, protect yourself from an audit, and still enjoy the crazy ride of an entrepreneur. You just listened to the post titled Maximizing Your Tax Advantages as an Entrepreneur by Josh Bauerle with EOFire.com. And thank you to Josh for his guest post on EOFire, and of course thank you to John Lee Dumas, who runs the site, for letting us share articles from EOFire. Since 2012, John has interviewed over 2,000 incredible entrepreneurs, and they include a lot of names you probably know, like Tony Robbins, Barbara Corcoran, Tim Ferriss, and many more. But that came after a lot of hard work and soul-searching. After serving as an active-duty Army officer for 4 years, John tried law school, he was a first-semester dropout, corporate finance, and commercial real estate. He now hosts a podcast, teaches podcasting, creates journals, and a lot more, and he also posts his revenue every month on the site, sharing exactly where it's coming from, and it's pretty much always 6 figures monthly, so he's doing quite well. And you can check all that out and learn more about him at eofire.com. But that's it for episode 726 of Optimal Startup Daily. Hope you enjoyed it and that you're having a great start to your week, and I'll see you back here tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.